Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome, 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 welcome. I am Ebony Marie Chappelle, and I'm the host of What's Good with Ebony Chappelle. It's a podcast. And today I am going to be leading a session on podcasting for beginners. I am so sorry. Please accept my apologies. I intended to be doing this with you all live, but my travel plans have changed. So I'm coming to you live from my Airbnb. I'm going to be on a plane at the time when I'm supposed to do the presentation for you today. So I had to improvise. So I hope you will forgive me for not being able to be live with you all this afternoon. But I hope that you learn a lot from this session about how to get started in podcasting, how to promote your podcast, and all that good stuff. So I will go ahead. I'm already sharing the beginning of the presentation. I want to encourage you to grab a notebook and a pen to take notes so that you can come back and remember the things that we talked about. Or you can just use your phone, whatever, use your notes app or whatever to take notes of what it is that we talk about. I will send this slide deck to the organizers so that they can share it with you all. And I include my contact information at the end of the presentation. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. I would love to help you on your podcast journey. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So today we are going to talk about a few different things. We're going to go through some pregame questions just to get us started. And I'm going to intro myself a little bit more. We're going to talk about why podcasting is, a good tool and a good platform to use. We're going to go through podcast essentials, tips on how to develop your content, develop your brand, promote your content, and stay consistent, which is the most important part I've learned about podcasting. So, in the chat, and I really hate that I can't see what you guys put in the chat, but maybe you'll email me and let me know what you say. But just to get us started, do you listen to podcasts? And if so, which ones do you listen to? So I listen to one of my favorite podcasts is called This American Life. And it is a podcast that started out as a radio show and then it moved into the radio show and podcast platform. And it tells all these really great and interesting stories about so many different things that are just a part of everyday American life. So that is one of my favorites. Been listening to it for years. I also love Well Balanced Black Girl. It's an excellent podcast. It's all about self-care and mental wellness. So those are two of my favorites that I listen to. So I'm interested to know if we have any podcast people in the audience and what your favorite podcasts are. The next question is, what is one topic you could talk about for an hour nonstop? And this is wide open. It could be anything. Is it food? Is it sports? Is it music, fashion, social media, funny stuff you've seen on TikTok? Whatever it is, what is one topic that if someone was paying you that you could talk about for an hour non-stop, uninterrupted? So go ahead and drop those comments in the chat. Um, yeah, we're going to come back to those. So, about me, I am an award winning multimedia journalist and digital content creator. I have worked in radio, as you see in that picture. That is me at the WTLC studios. I was in and out of TLC for maybe about 5 years or so. When I was last there, I co hosted a show called Child. Why am I forgetting the name of the show? I co-hosted a show called Open Lines. Before that, I was hosting two shows by myself, one called Eye on the Community and the other one being Open Lines. So I was doing that for a couple of years before I transitioned out of the radio station and started my podcast, What's Good with Ebony Chappel, in 2020. So it was a pandemic baby, not a physical pandemic baby, but a creative pandemic baby. And what happened was, I'll talk a little bit about that. What happened with the podcast was that at the radio station, I loved my time there and I wanted to find avenues to expand something that I was so passionate about, which was storytelling and interviewing people. I've been doing that in some form ever since I was in elementary school. So being able to expand that into so many different career fields has been really awesome. So the podcast was just another step in that journey. Outside of that, I love supporting and advocating for my community, and I do that in a lot of different ways. I'm really big on volunteer work. I love doing things like this program, being able to talk to young people about their dreams and aspirations and encourage them to explore them. And my gift of public speaking, my gift of interviewing, of storytelling, of strategy, of organizing, I love sharing that gift with the world. So I do a lot of different things in the community. I've helped build a pop up park on the west side. I grew up in Hallville, so helping to build a pop up park over there called Belmont Beach. I volunteer with an organization called the Indianapolis Press Club Foundation, where we give scholarships to Indiana journalism students. So maybe in a few years, I will see some of your names come across my desk for scholarships. So those are some of the things that I like to do. And above all, like I said earlier, so excited to be here with you today to talk about the essentials of podcasting. So why podcasts? Podcasts are so great for a lot of reasons. One, it is a great way to connect with people. Earlier, when I asked, what is one topic you could talk about nonstop? There are so many podcasts. When you open Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, even, a lot of podcasters post on YouTube. I post on YouTube in addition to those other platforms I just mentioned. But when you open it up, you can find a podcast about literally anything that you're interested in. I went to go visit my Aunt Martha a few months ago, and she was saying that she really wanted to get back into gardening and was interested in learning more tips and tricks on how to develop her garden. So I said, "Hey, Aunt Martha, give me your phone. Let's open the podcast app and see what apps they have about gardening." And we even dug a little further and we're like, okay, what podcasts are out about Black gardeners? And lo and behold, we found something. So there is no limit to the number of topics and things that people do podcasts about. There's a guy that does a podcast called "Go to Sleep with Me" or something along those lines, and it's a podcast where he just talks about random stuff for like an hour or so, and people listen to it to help them go to sleep. So there's something out there for everyone. So it's a great way to connect with people and to share your voice and your interests with the world. Also, if you are a business owner or you're someone that is involved in a community cause, whether it be, let's say your business is you bake cakes, you make custom cakes for holidays and stuff and people's birthdays, and that's something that you're really into, you could make a mini podcast. And I say mini because the time is also open. There are podcasts I listen to that are 10 minutes long. There are podcasts I listen to that are 2+ hours long. So it's really, all across the board. But let's say that you own a business where you make custom cakes. You could start a podcast that talks about your process in making the cakes, where you draw inspiration from. You could interview other cake makers. You could interview the people that make the special fondant or the frosting or the little decorations. You could interview people that have bought cakes from you. I mean, there's no limit to where the content can go. So it'll be a great way to promote your business while also offering something interesting and unique that people can connect to. Also, causes. So let's say that your cause is, let me just think of one, gun violence. I'm going to use that as an example because it's something that's very timely, especially given what's happening all over the world, but especially in our own community. So let's say that gun violence is a cause that you care about and you want to get involved in. You could start a podcast where you talk about the need for common sense gun laws. You could talk to people who have been families who have been victims of gun violence, where they've lost someone, or maybe someone in their family has become seriously injured, and physically affected by gun violence. That, is just one example. But podcasts are a great way to promote your business endeavors or causes that you seriously believe in. Also, and this is something that a lot of people want to know about or want to get into, and that is making money off of podcasts. Podcasting has blown up over the years. When I first heard of the concept, or the platform of podcasting, I was in college and I was at Ball State. I graduated from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, and I got there in 2007 as a freshman. So that was quite a few years ago. And my freshman year, my friends that went to IU Bloomington started a podcast about hip hop. And I'm, a huge hip hop person. So I was a guest on their podcast a couple of times, and I can't even remember how we did it. I remember I used GarageBand, which was on my computer. I had a Mac laptop at the time. So I would use that to record myself and then send my recording to them to integrate into the show. I think a couple of podcasts I did, we recorded in a studio. Sometimes you called in on the phone. Like, there were different ways to do it. But back then, it was something that was still very young, and it was the very beginning stages of the industry. So it wasn't something that was as huge as it is today. Nowadays, you look at people like Angela Yee, Joe Budden, the Breakfast Club, the entire crew. I believe their show is on podcast platforms. Um, there's so many people that have started podcasts, and now you can become super paid off of creating a podcast. You don't have to be as famous as Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God, Joe Budden. You don't have to be as famous as any of these people to make money off of podcasts. You can make money off of your podcast as someone that's maybe you have a following in your neighborhood or in your city. You can make money there. So a lot of big brands, what they do is they work with what they consider to be micro influencers. And I'm not going to spend too much time here because I can really get in the weeds about this. But as long as you're building up a consistency and you have a following, brands are looking at that. And even if it's not a big brand, if it's not like if you listen to a lot of podcasts, you'll hear ads, excuse me, for a platform called BetterHelp, which is a online therapy service. So they send BetterHelp, and there's a job recruiter app, and they buy ads on um podcasts all the time. If I'm listening to a small podcast, a big podcast, chances are, if they have ads, one of the ads is going to be for either one of those businesses. So that just goes to show you that bigger brands look, but even smaller brands. So let's go back to the cake baker. So let's say my podcast, for example, What's Good with Ebony Chappel. I'm still in the beginning stages, but let's say I get to the point where I've built up like this super good following in the city and have built up my numbers on the podcast platform. The cake baker can then come to me as an individual and say, "Hey, Ebony, I want to put an ad on your podcast to promote my cake baking service. How do we do that?" And I could figure out whatever the price is. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. I have an entire equation that I've learned through research on how to price out stuff like that, but I'm not gonna bore y'all with that right now. But somebody could come to me and say, "Hey, I want to promote my cake bake business. Can I give you a couple $100 and you talk about my cake baking business on your podcast?" And we make a deal. We sign some sort of agreement because paperwork is important. Good to learn that early. But we make some sort of agreement, and then boom, I have made money off of my podcast. That's just one example. If someone's promoting an event, they may want to have you talk about it on their podcast. And sometimes it's good to do a little bit of that stuff for free starting out to just build your platform up. So that's a little bit about that. We'll talk more about ways to make money in just a little bit. So, podcasting essentials. Podcasting does not have to be an expensive endeavor. You can start really with what you have and build from there. So, most people have one of these, right? You have a cell phone. Your cell phone, if you have an Android, if you have an iPhone, whatever, usually has a voice recorder app, right? So, you could literally open that up and no headphones, no nothing, just talk into the mic. Probably not like that. There's probably a better way to do it. But get into a quiet space, record yourself talking, and boom, you are recording audio that can then be chopped and then turned into a podcast production. You can also use, see, I got a little bit of a prop here, headphones. So most headphones come with some sort of mic on it because you use them inside your phone to talk on the phone or whatever. But you could just use your earbuds starting out. Right now, I have, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I'm using an actual mic that's plugged into my computer for this presentation so that the audio sounds a little better. And then I'm using just some regular earbuds that I got from the dollar store that cost like $5. So you can start with what you have, and then build later. Recording and editing. I mentioned earlier the audio recording app on your phone is a great place to start. You can also trim that audio if you want to cut out like the beginning or the end or whatever. You can do that inside the app. There's also another app that is a great tool. It's called Anchor, and Anchor is pretty much like a one-stop shop. So I'm going to talk about Anchor in a little bit as well, to show you guys how that works, and it's totally free. So you can edit, record, post, and monetize your podcast, which we just talked about. One of the things that people really get into with podcasting is, how do I get money? How do I get paid off this? You can do that through Anchor really, really easily. So here's a video.
Thought, I should start a podcast. Meet Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast ever. It's a powerful mobile app and web tool that lets you record a podcast anywhere and distribute it everywhere. It's great whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. And it's 100% free. You can record your show straight into Anchor on your phone, iPad, or the web, using any mic you want. Record alone or with friends or co-hosts anywhere in the world. You can add background music and transitions, and your listeners can send you voice messages that you can incorporate right into your next episode. If you want to produce your show using another app, you can upload your own audio directly from web or mobile and still take advantage of Anchor's totally free podcast hosting. Once your podcast is ready to publish, Anchor can automatically distribute it to every major podcast platform. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, so your listeners can hear your show wherever they want. And on the web, you can see detailed analytics about how people are listening. Plus, you'll get a great-looking profile page where anyone can listen to your podcast or subscribe to it. And if you want to ask your audience to support your work, Anchor makes it easy to collect monthly payments from the people who love your podcast and want to see it grow. You really don't need a recording studio, expensive equipment, or a bunch of technical knowledge to deal with a podcast feed. Just get started and join the diverse community of podcasters already on Anchor. We can't wait to hear your podcast.
So perfect example of how easy it can be to get started right where you are with the tools that you have. So I've used the Anchor app before and it is really helpful. I use the Anchor app to record the trailer of my podcast, which is really important. So a trailer is like the commercial that comes on when you very first start a podcast. So let's say that you want to launch a podcast on July 18th. You might record a trailer 2 weeks before and put that out and say, hey, tune in on July 18th to hear the first episode of What's Good with Ebony Chappel. So that is an example of how you can do that. And I love that they talk about the monetization in there as well. So really, really cool tool. And they make it so easy. Everything's in one spot. So you don't have to because there's a lot of technicalities that go into uploading podcasts on each different platform. So Anchor making that way easy is a great way to start if you are beginning in this.
First, go to Anchor.
So also, if you want to do audio and video, some people just do one or the other. My podcast is both. It's audio and video. And what I do is I record and then I post on YouTube my video portion, and then audio portion goes on everything else. So there are so many different ways to do it. But now Anchor has a video component where you can upload your videos there if you want to have a video component to your podcast. One other cool thing about Anchor, now that Anchor is under the Spotify lens, you can play music under your show in like real music, not like the royalty free music that they give you on the app for free. Let's say your favorite song is like the Tim song, Free My Mind or whatever. If you wanted to play that somewhere in between your show, if it's on Spotify, you would be able to do that. Let's say you like Vince Staples or whoever, Beyonce, whoever it is that you want to play, you could get their music and then play it in between segments of your show. But here is a little bit about how to do videos on Anchor.
Spotify's free podcasting platform, and simply create an account. Once you're set up, select New Episode, and then click Upload to upload your finished video file. While your video uploads, enter your episode title and description. Once the upload is complete, you can preview the audio of your video file right inside Anchor to make sure it sounds just how you want it. Now, you can add a question for your fans to answer or a multiple choice poll. You own the way your fans can interact with your content, so the choice is yours. When you're ready, click Next to set up your podcast. Just like a video channel, you'll want to enter your podcast title and description, which is where your fans will find all your video content on Spotify. Select show category and language for better discoverability. Finally, upload your cover art or let us make one for you. Click Publish, and you'll be live on Spotify. Finally, find your show on Spotify and share it with your followers so they can find the new home for your video content. Video podcasts on Spotify are your new home for video. Publish yours today with Anchor.
All right. So I mentioned earlier some things that you can add as you grow. So you can get a microphone. So what I have, let me see if I can hold it up. This is a blue mic. Oh, it even sounds better when I hold it closer to my face. Imagine that. So this is a blue Yeti mic I got from Best Buy, and it comes with a USB cord that hooks right into my computer. So I can use this to record audio in my computer. And this might cost me like $100. So not cheap by any means, but it's not as expensive as a lot of podcast mics could be. So there's really a range of how expensive this stuff is, but this, has a mic on it, and it came with my cell phone. So I definitely started out, when I first started my podcast, I was just doing Facebook Live and stuff like that. So that's how I started getting into it and get myself comfortable. And I just used these, plugged them into my phone or my tablet or the computer, and I just went from there. So it's very simple. Also, the camera. So I have been using the camera that comes inside my laptop. Really easy, really simple. And you can use that. Or if you want to step your game up, you can get another camera that is like more of an outside camera and set that up. So if it's a GoPro or a DSLR or whatever, but that's something that you can evolve and grow into. Also, lighting. Lighting is really important. A little hypocritical right now because my lighting is not the best, but I started out sitting in front of a window. So you always want to have light shining on your face if you're going to be recording yourself for any reason. If you want it to look good, you have light shining in your face so that people can actually see what you look like. Use the lighting in the room. So I did turn on the light in the room to try to diffuse the sunshine. The natural lighting, I'm really a natural light fan, so it's what I prefer. But you can also invest in a ring light. So I got a ring light on Amazon for, I want to say like $45. They have them in all different ranges. You can buy a ring light at the dollar store. So these are things that you could develop and add onto your repertoire and to your toolkit as a podcaster, but you really don't have to. You can use what you have: sunlight, the earbuds that come with your phone. You can use all of that stuff. You can borrow things if you have friends that have access to stuff, but just use what you have. And then if you are blessed enough to be able to add to it in the future, go ahead and do that. But don't feel discouraged or feel like you can't start because you don't have like a top tier podcast studio. So don't do that to yourself. So one of the most important things is developing your content. And that is, what are you going to talk about? Like, what is this show about? Going back earlier to the first question that I asked during the pregame segment, if you could talk about something for an hour straight, that would probably make a decent podcast because someone is likely interested in that. Now, you have to work to make it interesting and make it organized, but you can start there and just use your curiosity as a way to figure out what to talk about. Some people do podcasts where they interview guests. I interview guests on my podcast. Some episodes I do that are all me, and I just pick a topic, whatever is on my heart, whatever, I planned for, which I'll get to later. And then I will just talk for however long I want to. Or, if I'm interviewing guests, I have a format for that. And then going back and listening to, which can be really strange in the beginning, listening to your own voice, but it is important, especially in the beginning, that you go back and you listen to what it is that you did and you learn from it and say, Now, not being overly critical because you don't want to beat yourself up, but just listen and say, hey, I really like the way I did that. I want to do more of that thing. Or, I could have did that a little differently. Let me try something new the next time. And everybody, no matter what level you're on, it's always important to continue to evolve and grow in your craft. So a little bit more about developing your content. So what I do before I do a show is, and you can make one outline that is like your standard outline, and every show, you're following the same format. So you have a way that you start, you have something that you do in the middle, and then you always have a consistent way that you end. That is one way that you can elevate your podcast and make it more listenable. Because some people do podcasts where, and no shade, but they get on and they just talk and there's no direction to where it is they're going. So as a listener, I find it really hard to follow along because I'm someone that appreciates a certain level of organization. So my cousin loves, for instance, and I don't know that they may have a podcast, but it's a group called 85 South that is like a bunch of improv comedians. DC Young flies in that group from Wildin' Out and some other people. And while 85 South is hilarious and I love the things they do, for me as a person that appreciates like formulaic things that follow a step by step by step, it's not for me. But my cousin, on the other hand, loves it because she doesn't need all that. So there's different, different strokes for different folks. But long story short, I just think a good rule of thumb is to have a way that you start, things that you do in the beginning, and the way that you end. So the way I start every show is I say, "Welcome back. This is another episode of What's Good with Ebony Chappel." And then I tease whatever the content is that I'm going to talk about that day. So my last episode, I interviewed a young man named Justin Bland, who created something called the Made Man Improv Show, which is based here in Indianapolis. They're really funny guys, and women and girls, and it's a lot of them, and they're funny. But anyways, so I tease, I'm going to be talking to Justin Bland, blah, blah, blah. And then I remind people, like, subscribe, rate, review, comment, follow me on social media, check out the website. And then I jump into my conversation with Justin. I cue that up, boom. I jump into my conversation with Justin. And then I do that. And then at the end, I say, "Thank you so much, Justin, for a really great conversation." You can learn more about Justin at whatever the website is. I'll drop the link in the show notes. And then I will remind people, like, subscribe, rate, review, comment, connect with me on social media, visit my website. And I do all of that in the end. And then I have a catchphrase: "Have a great time and a positive life. Peace." That's how I end my show. You can end yours and begin yours however you want. Like, let your creativity be the guide, but having a way that you start, a way that you engage in the middle of the show, whatever your meat is. So like building a sandwich, right? So you have your bread on this side, you have, your filling, whatever that is, and then, the other piece of bread. So that is a way to do that. And always remind your listeners to engage with you. Another engagement strategy is, if they've started to engage with you, shout them out on the show. So let's say on the Justin Bland episode, I get a lot of love on YouTube and a lot of people sharing. The next episode I record, I could say, "Oh, shout out to Devin Ginn, shout out to Christian Strickland, shout out to Tanasha Anders, shout out to Ashley Martin, shout out to them for liking the show and subscribing. Shout out to Griff, for liking and subscribing to the show." Whatever. So that's another way to re-engage with your community that has been listening to you and supporting, so that they come back for more. So that is a good thing to do as far as developing your content. When you're interviewing guests, and this is optional because you may not have a show where you interview guests. Maybe you just talk and it's just you. But if you're interviewing guests, some simple rules of thumb to having a great interview: the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, why. So you want to know who they are, what they do, where they do it at, who, what, where, when did they start? Why do they do it? Those are just some very simple questions that you can use to get to know someone. Also, it's really good to do your research. Now, you don't have to do FBI, Facebook stalker level research if you don't want to. But if you want to go that extra mile, dig up everything you can about that person. What are the things that stick out to you? For instance, when I was interviewing Justin, he talked about something that happened when he was a little kid, and I didn't know about that. I didn't know that he first got the inkling to want to be a performer and a creator when he was a child. But then it made me think of another question in my head outside of the questions that I had planned for. And I was like, because I'm a person that really believes in manifestation and vision boarding and like imagining your dreams coming true. So I asked him, I said, what, would you consider what you did as a kid with practicing performing? Would you consider that manifestation? And then it led to a beautiful response that then I was able to capture that clip. So just snatch that out and then use that to promote the show. So I took that video clip, edited it down, and then put it up as a reel on Instagram to promote my interview with Justin. So really important to do your research so you have good things to bring to the table. I had been to a couple of his shows, so I had lots of stuff to talk about. But also in the midst of the conversation, and I should have added this as a bullet point on there, but active listening. So active listening is listening to what a person's saying and then just really focusing in on that and thinking, that I'm curious about this, I'm curious about that. But you have to allow them the opportunity to respond, and then you jump in with more stuff and you just kind of build the conversation from there. Most of the times when I'm interviewing somebody, I start off with, I might have a very loose idea for the journey that I want to go on in my conversation with them, but I don't map it out like too particularly. I have a lot of things I can pull from, a lot of content I could pull from because I've prepared, I've done my research, I know the person that I'm talking to. Well, I maybe don't know them personally, but I know enough about them to be able to do this. So really important to do that. And having some signature questions. So on my show, I have developed a signature question based off of the title of my podcast. So my podcast is What's Good with Ebony Chappel. When people come on the show, and I did it different ways in the very beginning when I was starting out, but now at this point it's very standard. When we start the conversation, I let them know, I say, I love to start off the show by asking people what's good with them. That could be anything that is making you smile, that's bringing joy to your life. What's good with Justin? And then they maybe have never been asked, what's good with you? They maybe have been asked, how are you? They maybe have been asked, if they're a person that's been interviewed a million times, also, they're used to answering the same questions. I started the Made Men Improv in 20 such and such. We do shows on this day. Like, that type of stuff, he's probably used to answering. But somebody asking him, what's good with you? What's bringing a smile to your face today? What's making you happy right now in your life is maybe something that they hadn't been asked, but then it opens up the door for so many different things to happen. And then, boom, it's a signature question aligned with my brand, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, that just keeps everything cyclical and going, and it brings everything together into this really beautiful, cohesive thing. So just a couple of tips on developing your content. I mentioned this earlier, but learning from yourself, listen to your old episodes and take notes on how to improve, and learn from your fave podcasters or your fave people that are presenters, entertainers, whatever. Like if you like the way Cardi B or Young Miami or Santana or I'm trying to think of somebody else that's really funny on like IG Live. Like, let's say you love the way they do Instagram Live. Why do you love it? What's something interesting that they do that you can copy off of? And not copy off of as in like just totally jack their thing, but like what can you borrow and kind of like put your own twist on that you really like? I'm a girl that grew up in the age of the Oprah Winfrey talk show. So a lot of what I do and things that I'm interested in terms of like conversing come from her, but I'm not Oprah, so I'm not going to do it how Oprah does it. I'm going to do it in Ebony's way because I grew up in Hallville and I'm from the Midwest and I have a certain thing that I like to bring to the table. So I'm going to bring that, and I'm not going to necessarily be like her. I'm not going to be Oprah. I'm not going to be Lisa Ling or Barbara Walters or any of the other people that I love that are interviewers and are excellent interviewers, but I can learn from them and try to figure out, okay, what are some things that I can learn from to take into my own craft? So really important to do if you want to keep evolving and growing. So developing your brand. So your brand is, the way I would describe it is the way that you communicate who you are and what you do through images, colors, shapes, typography, meaning fonts. How do you promote who you are and what you do through those things? So start off with some brainstorming. Think about things you're interested in, like what's your favorite color, or what, when you're doing your show, what colors kind of come to mind? What colors and shapes and whatever do you think is a good fit for that? So do a little brainstorming and just really have fun with it, because what it looks like is important as well in terms of promoting. So here is a little bit of like my brand story, which is still developing. So up in the top left corner, you see my logo, What's Good with Ebony Chappel. I got that logo done by a a college colleague of mine named Matt Filer. He owns a business called Invictus Designs. So when I first decided I was going to do a podcast, I reached out to him and I was like, yo, can you do me some logos or whatever? And he did a logo for this and a logo for another podcast that I want to do but haven't launched yet. But at least I got the stuff. So I got that in 2020. Then below, you see this picture of me in this really cute polka dot dress. Shout out to my friend Sarah Janae. She styled me for a photo shoot. And this was so many years ago. This photo shoot is so old. I did this photo shoot when I first started doing my own show at the radio station. So I wanted to have images to promote myself. And the radio station didn't necessarily have the tools to offer that. So I did it myself. And I was like, I know I need images. So let me just go out and get some images. And I got these done. And I didn't really use them a lot because they didn't align with the kind of show I was doing. So I saved them and I just used them. I put them up on the gram because they're cute. I was like, I'm going to flex a little bit on gram. But I didn't use them for that show really. I just kind of held on to them. But then when it was time for me to do the podcast, maybe 4 years later, I just went back to those pictures. I said, I still got those good pictures shot by Jay Golds. My friend Candace did the makeup. Sarah styled me. I had my hair done. Like, let me just use those images that I already got and bring them into the modern day. The polka dots, you will see polka dots everywhere. Polka dots, I had never really worn them since I was a child, but Sarah put me in polka dots and I love this dress so much. And I got a lot of compliments on it. And then a homeboy of mine named Raymond reached out and he was like, yo, polka dots are your thing. Like, you should really rock with that. So then when it was time for me to do my show, I knew I liked pink and I liked yellow in terms of like, I wanted something poppy and bright because I was like, what's good with Ebony Chappel? A show about people doing good things and things that make you feel good. And I was like, I want something bright and poppy and I want to just like kind of live into that. So I got a piece of fabric online. Like I just went to some fabric website and ordered like a huge piece of polka dot fabric and set up my backdrop in my house. And that was the end of that. And then, I do a lot with like when I'm recording the show, I always try to like pay attention to my look. So I'll put on lipstick. I will put on like a cute top and do different stuff because that is the brand of what's good with Ebony Chappel. It's fun, it's poppy, it's cute. And I could be talking about heavy topics. I could be talking about anything, but the way that it looks is a look that is something that I wanted to promote. So that's where the polka dots came in. So now I took that logo, I took those polka dots, I took these old pictures that I had, and then I put together on Canva this little graphic right here. This was one of the earlier renditions of like my thumbnail that I put up on the podcast apps because when you're uploading to Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, all of that, they want to have an image that goes along with it. So I could have just did this. I could have just did the logo, and I think I did start off with just the logo, but I was like, okay, I want them to see me too because I'm part of this. So then boom, I did this, put my little tagline up under it. There you go. So then when I record shows like the show I just had with Justin Bland, I create a thumbnail and I do this all in Canva. This presentation right now is done in Canva, totally free app. You can pay for a premium subscription, but you can do a lot in the free one. So you can start out there. But I create a YouTube thumbnail on there and then boom, I have my graphic over here. I ask my guests for a good quality headshot of themselves and then boom, have my polka dots in the back. So I just play around with it and have fun. I am not a graphic designer by any stretch of the imagination, but Canva makes it really easy. So I use that and I just, let my imagination run wild. I mentioned earlier Canva, also Headliner. Headliner is a tool that I'm going to show you a video for in a little bit, but you can take audio recordings, audio clips from your podcast, and you can use that to create a tool. Not a tool, excuse me, a graphic that you could repost on social media to promote your podcast. But Canva, you can create your own logo in Canva. So if I really wanted to do that, instead of hiring Matt, I could have created my own logo. Even the photos, I didn't have to have a professional photographer take my pictures. I could have went to I could have went somewhere cute downtown on a nice day and just took my cell phone and took pictures of myself with as a selfie. Or I could have got a friend like, hey, come take these pictures of me. This is what I want you to do. Like stand here, do this, do that, and then go home, crop them, put a filter on, do whatever you want. But you can just use that. So there's always options out there for the free.
On how to create an audiogram in Headliner, which is a free cloud-based video creation app for creating unique social media videos. So here I am logged into my Headliner account. You will see several video creation wizards here. Click this audiogram wizard to start creating your audiogram. Next, you need to upload your audio. It can be a voiceover or a music clip. You can drag and drop your MP3 here, or click this button to upload an MP3, and choose your MP3 file. So once you've uploaded your audio, click Next. In this next step, you can trim the audio using these start and end boxes. When using this audiogram wizard, the maximum size of your audio clip is 10 minutes. In this demo, I'm going to use this full audio because it's only 28 seconds in duration, and click Next. In step 3, you need to choose the video size. You have 3 options: landscape, square, and portrait. I'll go with square and click Next. And in this final step, you can customize the waveform. Under wave type, choose a type of wave. I'll go with bricks. And for the wave position, I'll go with bottom. You can also change the color using this color palette. I'll leave it as default. And finally, you can add a background image by clicking this button, choosing an image, cropping it to the size to fit the canvas, and click Crop. The image will be added. Finally, click Create Project. It will take a couple of seconds.
Okay, and then I cut it off there because everything else is not really relevant to what we're talking about. But Headliner is an app that you can use to create like a little audio clip that you could reshare on your social media platform. So I use Headliner every time I record a podcast and I'm ready to promote it. I create a Headliner graphic, and you just have to play around with this stuff to learn how to use it. But it's very, very easy. If y'all are creating TikToks, and Snapchat and all the different type of stuff, this will be a piece of cake for you. Trust me. So I always do a Headliner graphic so that people can hear a clip of the show. I could just post a still photo and then in the comment section write a caption and say, I talked to Justin about this. But what's better, hearing it from Justin or reading a caption about what he said? I think hearing it from his mouth is better. So promoting your content, you want to get those likes up. So use what you got. Social media. If you are on social media, you can either use the pages that you already have or create a special page for your show on whatever platform you want to do it on and put your clips up on there. My sisters just made me download TikTok. I am still trying to figure out what I want to do with my TikTok page, but I have at least started uploading my clips on there from my podcast. So that's good. If you have a website, you can use your website to promote your podcast. If you don't have one, don't worry about it. It's something you can add, you can build onto your repertoire later on. Newsletter, same thing. If you don't have one already, don't worry about it. You can build it later on and use that to promote what you have going on. There are tons, as many as podcasts as there are online podcast communities, and there's just online communities in general. So Facebook is probably like out of date for y'all, but anybody that's listening that does still use Facebook, Facebook groups are amazing. So going back to the cake bake shop. So that's actually a business name. So let me stop saying that because they don't have anything to do with that. But the cake baker. Let's say that you are the cake baker and now you have this podcast. You can get onto Facebook, or you could even do the same thing on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, any social media platform by finding other people who care about cakes and say, hey, check out this clip of such and such, talking about this new fondant that just came out. So you can do stuff like that, but you can basically promote it to people. Also using hashtags. I always hashtag my clips when I post them. Anything I post about the podcast, I always try to use relevant hashtags to go along with it. So if you want to promote it to a certain group or a certain community, what hashtags are they using? Use those hashtags on your post to get attention to what it is that you're putting out there. And also word of mouth, talking to people about the fact that you do a podcast when you're out and about. If it just comes up in conversation, or if you want to just actually actively promote yourself, just let people know what you have going on, and you'd be surprised how far that goes. So staying consistent, just keep swimming. I thought about putting a picture of Nemo in here and Dory, but decided against it. But you just have to keep going. You cannot, if it's something that you care about and that you want to see grow, it takes consistency. One of my friends told me that you need at least 100 episodes in before you start seeing like a certain level of growth and a certain level of engagement, because people want to know that you're consistent. I have podcasts that I love, and when they are off for longer than a week or 2 weeks, I almost forget they exist. And that's kind of sad, because a week to 2 weeks is not a long time. But in podcast world, or in any type of content creation world, it kind of is a long time. So you don't want to leave your audience hanging. If you're going to do a season, like some podcasts are now getting into seasonal things where they might do 8 episodes and 8 episodes be a season. And then they say, okay, we're taking a break. We will be back in October for season 2. At least you know, and then you can always go back and listen to the content that they already have. But long story short, whatever it is that you decided you're going to do, just find a way to stay consistent with it and develop a content calendar. So that's a whole nother conversation for another day, a whole nother workshop. But developing a content calendar is basically like looking at a standard calendar and deciding, what am I going to talk about on what days, and planning it out. You can plan it out for 1 month. You can plan it out for 6 months. You can plan out a content calendar for an entire year. It's totally up to you and for what it is that you're trying to create. But content calendars are super helpful. And then set a schedule for everything in order to be consistent, especially if you're doing this all on your own. You have to have a schedule. So a schedule for when you're going to record. Are you going to record on Tuesdays? I record typically, I started off recording on Wednesdays. And then I moved into, now I just record whenever, like I pick a certain plot of time and I record a bunch of episodes, and then I put them out on Wednesdays. So having a schedule for recording, having a schedule for when you edit. When are you going to sit and edit? Are you going to edit as soon as you finish recording? Or are you going to save all of that and then edit on like Sunday night or Saturday afternoon? Whatever you want to do. Totally up to you and what your schedule allows. When are you going to promote the show? Are you going to promote it only when it comes out? Are you going to promote twice a week, 3 times a week? What does that look like? Make a decision, figure it out, and then work with it. And it's fine to adapt as time goes, because you will see, oh, that worked. Okay, that didn't work so well. Let me try something else. So feel free to be flexible. Also planning, because you are going to need time to plan out what you're going to talk about. Finding guests if you're going to interview a guest, doing your research for the topics you want to talk about. So just finding time to do things. So scheduling is really, really important. Again, going back to your phone, everybody has a calendar app, so you can just use that. So that is my presentation on podcasting for beginners. I hope that it was helpful. I wish I was there to answer your questions in person, but since I'm not, you can email me at ebonychappel@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you guys. If you do decide to create a podcast, or if you already have one, send it to me. If you just listen to something really cool and you want to share that with me, send it. ebonychappel@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much, and best of luck to you in everything you do. Have a great time and a positive life, y'all. Peace.